So this is a comment from Texas Billy Bob. And he said, the Tartarian world empire and its demise in the writings of Anatoly Fomenko and Galeb Nozovsky on Russian Tartary, History, Fiction, or Science, Chronology 1 through 5, The Issue with Mongols, and The Issue with Russian Tartary by Anatoly Fomenko and Galeb Nozovsky. According to Fomenko and Nozovsky, the buildings in St. Petersburg and across the world were all constructed by the Russian Tartars. That is, the so-called Mongol, which means great from Greek, Golden Volga Horde military Cossacks. This was before the Romanovs of Russia began in the 1600s, also known as 600 AD, when Tartary began to collapse as a single huge empire, rewrote Russian and world history with France, England, Spain, and Holland in the Romanovs. The Romanovs redrew all of the maps of the world. Fomenko and Nozovsky claim that Genghis Khan, Yuri Danilovich, Georgy Vislotovich, St. George and the Dragon united the warring Slavic Vargarian principalities of Russia under a single great prince, Khan. In the 14th century. According to Fomenko and Nozovsky, the French religious leader, scholar Joseph Justus Scaliger, 1540 to 1609, and the French Jesuit theologian scribe Denis Pitot, Dionysius Petavius, 1583 to 1652, added 1,000 years to our history and fabricated or made up the history of that 1,000-year period. And it's nasty, too.
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden? Excellent!
Thus, the year 2019, as we know it to be, or we thought we did, today is actually 1019 AD. That is to say, 1,019 years after the birth of Jesus. Note also that the Mongols, or Russians, described in ancient Chinese history, were tall, blue-eyed, and fair-haired, and wore beards. And he cites a source. Searches for Fictional Kingdom is the name of the book. Anyway, so I'm going to skip down a little bit, but you can read it. But the Mongol horde, well, the Russian Tsars made up the lie that Russia was attacked by the Mongol horde from the east and subjugated Russia for 200 years. It was done so the Romanovs could usurp the crown from the Russian Tartar Great Prince, or Khan. Russia was the so-called Mongol Great Horde Army. Accordingly, Russia was never invaded by another country in the 1400s or 400 AD, let alone the Mongol Tartary. Since Russia built the Great Mongol Tartary, Tartary was the largest empire in history because it included Russia. Since Russia built the Middle East, Asia Minor. So it includes Russia, the Middle East, Asia Minor, Central Asia, India, China, Africa, and North America from the West. The other way around the circle, the record, the disc, the frisbee. North America, Central America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries. See? I'm telling you, I kind of discovered this along with other people, like all on our own. And then here, somebody found it in the book. That's awesome. It's the only explanation. You've seen the evidence if you've watched my videos, like on, I did one on South Africa. I did one on New Zealand. I did one on Australia. I just was grabbing places out there, trying to make sense of all this stuff. The worldwide empire of Tartary remained intact from the 1300s to the 1600s when the Romanovs and the countries in Western Europe sought to destroy it and remove it from the maps and from history books. Well, 300 through 600s. All the buildings of the Great Tartary were interconnected to a worldwide power grid for free energy. I knew it. And also for communication, because when Jesus said, take the gospel to the whole world, they did it, and he knew what he was talking about. So they rewrote it. You know, if he said that, then he meant it. He knew. The Romanovs, who were part of the 13 interbreeding so-called royal bloodlines of the Illuminati, they're bent on creating, or they have a formula used to create total mind control of the world. It's worldwide evil and misery. It's the 13 satanic bloodlines with the Freemasons and the Illuminati of Western Europe together. And they use the brainwash people to help destroy Tartary by a divide and conquer strategy and remove it from the maps after the early 1700s. Additionally, they destroyed the worldwide power grid that provided free energy, so people would then have to pay for oil, gas, and electricity as we do today, even though it just is supplied, out of the ground. It just doesn't stop, or out of the air in case of electricity, actually. That being said, I believe the black nobility of Venice likely represented the Phoenicians that had sailed to Italy from the west coast of Canaan. Example given, Tyre and Sidon, and they were behind this. They got, that got destroyed, I believe. But the black nobility Phoenicians likely established the Knights Templar. They set up the financial system. And I'm going to skip down a little bit. Because I don't know. But divide and conquer strategy of the so-called Reformation and the so-called, I think it's a fake history of the Inquisitions and the Unholy Wars. I don't even know that they happened. I think that's part of the Middle Ages. It's always gruesome. The made-up history is always more gruesome than reality.
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden? Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus.
People don't do a lot of the stuff that you believe that you've been taught that people would do to each other. You wouldn't do it, would you? Well, nobody else really does either. I mean, that's good. But the Russian army under the Romanovs in St. Petersburg, Russia, were likely allies with Napoleon, attacked Moscow to kill off the Tartars there in 1812 or 812 AD. At the early 1800s, 1810 to 1812. I mean, that's when it all hit the fan. It all went down. It went down, everything. Let's see. So then, in around 1812 was about the real beginning of the New World Order. And Great Tartary was pretty much destroyed at that point. Now, the Phoenician 13 royal bloodlines that destroyed Great Tartary, well, this is his conjecture, but they serve their god, Lucifer / Satan, who implements a divide and conquer strategy. So, we don't know true history, but Tartary had been around, that empire had been around for a very long time. And the electromagnetic energy technology and the exquisite buildings around the world that seem to have always been there, well, they were built at some point, and they were built under the Tartars. The Empire of Tartary. And they employed electromagnetic energy, that technology, as well as the refinements and aesthetically pleasing looks to them. So, let's stop here for a second. So they've been around for a long time. They have the technology. It probably explains Atlantis, Mesopotamia, Sumer, Egypt, Babylon, etc. It explains the origin of the Phoenicians, the evil. They use the word black, but it's not racial. It's just good, evil. That old chestnut with the black and white. Nobility of Venice. The good people are like the Bohemians, I believe, like the people of Atlantis, the Slavs, the Slavic people, the Goths. Not necessarily the Goth chicks, from the 90s or whatever. They're not evil. I'm just talking about, the like the Gauls, I think is what they're talking about. The Gothic age. The consolidation of the Russian principalities under the great Mongol prince Khan. The Slav, Genghis Khan, that is, Rurik, St. George, etc., occurred in the 14th century, which would be 1300 or 300 AD. The Tartarian Empire was at its peak, which would have been 330 to 600 AD. Now, I personally have a theory that Tartary was good and things went south in around the year 600, but maybe even the year 666. That was a very low point. It really was, and you don't see a lot from history about that year, whether it's 1666 or 666, but it was a dark time. Anyway, it's clear that it's in the 600s, maybe even right at 600 when they started messing around with the years. And I'm going to show you exactly how that works in a little while. But anyway, so when Tartary was at its in the 1600s, the great Mongol horde built the Great Wall in China to prevent invasions from the east, because Tartary was breaking apart, and probably since they were being attacked from the west, they would take the initiative. Now, China doesn't have a lot of ancient history before the 1600s when Tartary was at its peak, though you can find the religious, the emblems of both religions side by side. Now, Islam, which was the religion of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, because I've been seeing that where it says H and I think it's for the Ottoman Empire, that became the Muslim Empire in the 17th and 18th centuries, which would be the 600s and 700s AD, actually. And the Orthodox Christian Empire were under the leadership of the great Prince Khan of Tartary.
Your change, sir.
The division came about as a consequence of a religious schism that occurred in the 15th and 16th centuries, or the 400s, 500s AD, when the Russian Orthodox Christianity, Roman Catholicism, and Islam, he says, came into being in the so-called Reformation, but all the division led to the persecution and wars, or at least so the story goes. But at that time, the Turkish conquest of Tartary, as it's reported, was, part of the turmoil of that era. It's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with all of it, but it's very well put together, and it is more logical than the many, many contradictory things that we've found, and the story is unfolding, is it not? What the Romanovs and other members of the 13 interbreeding bloodlines of the Illuminati Western established did, well, okay, you know who they are. What they did to create factions within Tartary based on fear and hatred of differences in order to drive a wedge between the peoples and their religions. It's the old divide. It's the blue-red, Republicans, Democrats, the two-party system type thing. It keeps you under control because people aren't going to unite. There's more I want to get to, but the Tartarian people, which are basically like the Russians, the Russian Cossacks, but it included many, many, many other countries. It was truly an empire, and it was the world's largest, really. And its capital city was Kazan. That's why I made a song named Kazan, and I used a picture in the album art. Some place in Kazan. So, the cathedrals, the Tartars built all that stuff that other people claim to have built. And even like the Erie Canal in the United States, and the Panama Canal and the Suez Canals, and all these arches, these big gates like the Brandenburg Gate, all these, the Dennis Arch, the Arc de Triomphe. That's all the Tartars, man. All that kind of stuff. Stuff we don't build today. We don't even know how. We can't. We don't really do it, do we? The Phoenicians lied about the existence of the Roman and Greek empires, given that they were the principal herps of such pernicious penguin palaver. Isn't that a great summary? I mean, folks, is it not? Fabulous summary. Yeah. I think it's really great. Now, there's a lot to be filled in. There's a lot of stuff. All the technology alone is just mind-boggling. And so the ones hiding it, they have all that stuff. So some of the things that they're doing, like, we don't even know. We don't even know what's possible. I've seen some things. I have seen some things. I am telling you, I don't even want, some of them are so crazy, I don't even really want to say. But, I will eventually, maybe yeah. Boy, I have a lot of stuff to share, though. I think I nailed it on those boats. The boats that, they're ekranoplanes, they call them. Winged ground planes. They fly just above the water. They fly along. Those things, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's Tartarian. I nailed it. I'm almost certain of it. So if you remember this video I did from this old book, An Accurate Description of America, I was showing how I thought this poem from the 1600s described a huge ship upon the water. But the way it was described, I searched around. I searched and searched for an accurate description, something to represent it in modern technology, what was said. And the best I could find was something like an airplane going over the water. So I showed this video of an airplane or a jetliner because of the descriptions of the sounds. And then I was looking for something like that going over the water, and I couldn't. This is the best I could find right there. I didn't find anything better than hovercraft. So it was like anything with like a jet engine and then going over the water, really close to the water. So I came up with all this. And it's really odd because I only did this video maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And I searched, believe me, if it was out there, I would have found these ekranoplanes, but they weren't there. It just wasn't to be found. And so then now I've found those, and I went back and looked at this video and read the poem again, and it certainly describes, the thundering noises, the sounds of a jet engine, the speeds of a jet, but it's hovering over the water. So I thought of a hovercraft, but a hovercraft wouldn't even really appear to hover over the water like as in the description. And it had other vehicles inside of it, so it had to be large, kind of like a carrier vehicle. So it was really, I thought I had nailed it with the hovercraft thing, saying, well, maybe they've had these huge hovercraft things since a long time ago. And maybe they had. Maybe that is Tartarian technology as well. But I think a better description would be the ekranoplanes. See, there I even showed a hydrofoil, And I've known about hovercrafts. I've known about hydrofoils. I mean, I was a military kid, growing up in the 80s and 90s. I knew if there was, especially the Soviet tech, we were all, during the Cold War, we knew that stuff. I played every war game, from Risk to, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, and, all these types of things. I don't know why I can't just rattle off a dozen games, because I've played hundreds of games that were set in the Cold War era, whether they were video games, board games, whatever. So, and then the books I read at the time, they were set kind of in the Cold War. All the, like the James Bond stuff that was coming out, a lot of it was Cold War era. The Soviets were the bad guys. So if they had some super machine that could fly like this huge jet, I learned that the Spruce Goose was the biggest plane in the world. It just was. That was the answer. Now it's this other thing, this ekranoplane.
At the height of a 7-story building, until the Maria heavy cargo airplane, the dimensions of a vessel, its performance was that of an aircraft. Therefore, the prototype sample had the same size as the future combat vessel. It was the KM wing and ground machine. This wing and ground machine had no match in the whole world, and its construction was unique. The Gorky Reservoir was too small for tests, so KM was relocated to the Caspian Sea. By the way, KM meant simply a ship mock-up. But in the West it was called the Caspian Monster. It was easier to make taxpayers believe in the necessity of an antidote against such monsters.
And I have never heard, I don't recall seeing these things before either. And, as a kid growing up and, I would have been interested in something. I took another look, and the stories that they made up about it, they are false, and I have proof, but I can't really share it. But I talked to somebody who knows, or would know, I guess, put it that way. So okay, but I'm not. They'll try to sell these things as like a Mandela effect, but they are controlling the history, and they are putting the false stuff out there, and they think they can get away with it, and they have for the most part. But the real history is there, and it's starting to come out. And what's scary is, it's scary because they are totally in control, and they're not necessarily super evil, I think, but neither is a farmer to his farm animals until he is. So, yeah. All right. So on that note, I do want to share with you some pictures of coins. That's going to bring all this home, because some of you may be listening to this and you're like,